Inside the quiet sanctuary of St. Mark's Church, Father Thomas stood at the altar, his hands gently folded as he prayed over a newborn who had been declared dead earlier that day. The small gathering of mourners, including the baby's heartbroken parents, sat in solemn silence, their grief heavy in the candlelit space. This was meant to be a moment of closure, a final farewell in the presence of faith and community. But just as Father Thomas whispered his last words of prayer, something happened that left everyone in the church stunned. At first, the sound was so faint that no one reacted. A quiet gasp, almost like a whisper against the hushed stillness of the church. Father Thomas furrowed his brows, convinced his mind was playing tricks on him. But then it happened again, a small, sharp intake of breath. The baby's mother, Emily, lifted her tear-streaked face, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The father, James, turned toward the small white casket resting near the altar, his hands trembling. The priest hesitated for only a moment before stepping closer. A bead of sweat formed at his temple as he peered inside. And then, right in front of them, the impossible happened. The newborn's tiny fingers twitched. Gasps echoed through the church. Emily stumbled forward, clutching James's arm. The doctor who had been present at the service, a family friend, rushed to the front, his face drained of color. He reached in, pressing 2 fingers against the infant's wrist, then lowered his ear to the baby's chest. A stunned silence followed. The doctor's eyes widened as he turned to the parents. "There's a pulse," he whispered. Emily let out a strangled sob. James covered his mouth, his body shaking. Father Thomas crossed himself, unable to speak. The baby, declared dead just hours ago, was alive. The room erupted into chaos. The doctor sprang into action, carefully lifting the newborn while calling for an ambulance. Emily reached out, her hands shaking as she touched the tiny, warm fingers of her child. "What's happening?" she choked out, tears streaming down her face. "I don't know," the doctor admitted, "but we need to get this baby to a hospital. Now." As sirens wailed in the distance, no one in the church could explain what they had just witnessed. But one thing was certain: what was supposed to be a final farewell had turned into something no one would ever forget. The ambulance arrived within minutes, its flashing lights casting long shadows against the church walls. Paramedics rushed inside, their boots echoing on the marble floor as they approached the altar. The doctor, still cradling the newborn, quickly relayed what had happened. "I don't understand it," he admitted, his voice tight with urgency. "The baby had no vital signs when I checked earlier. But now, there's a pulse, shallow breathing." The lead paramedic, a woman named Sarah, took over, carefully wrapping the infant in a thermal blanket as her partner prepared an oxygen mask. She glanced at the parents. "We need to move fast. Do you want to ride with us?" Emily and James nodded frantically, their hands still trembling. The church had become a blur around them. The murmuring crowd, Father Thomas standing frozen in disbelief, the candles flickering in the sudden rush of movement. As they hurried toward the ambulance, James stole a glance at the doctor. Could there have been a mistake? His voice was hoarse, filled with both hope and fear. The doctor exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "It's possible, but unlikely. If anything, this could be a case of Lazarus syndrome, a rare phenomenon where circulation returns after failed resuscitation." but we won't know for sure until we run tests." The words barely registered. All that mattered was that their child was alive. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics worked swiftly, monitoring vital signs and administering oxygen as the vehicle sped toward the nearest hospital. Emily couldn't take her eyes off her baby's tiny chest, rising and falling, however faintly. She reached out, brushing her fingers over warm skin, as if afraid it would all disappear. "Stay with us," she whispered, her voice breaking. James wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his grip firm but shaking. They had already mourned once today. They couldn't bear to do it again. Up front, the driver radioed ahead. "We have a neonate, previously declared deceased, now presenting with spontaneous circulation. ETA 5 minutes." The hospital staff would be waiting. More tests, more uncertainty. No one had answers yet, but one thing was clear: this was far from over. The ambulance tore through the city streets, sirens wailing as the paramedics monitored the newborn's fragile vitals. Emily clutched James's hand, her knuckles white. Every beep of the heart monitor felt like a lifeline, a confirmation that their baby was still with them. Sarah, the lead paramedic, glanced up from her readings. "The heart rate is stabilizing, but we need to get a full assessment as soon as we arrive." James swallowed hard. "Do you think—" He hesitated, his voice thick with fear. "Do you think they made a mistake? That our baby was never really gone?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "It's hard to say. Cases like this are extremely rare. Sometimes, newborns experience apparent stillbirth due to undetected shallow breathing or hypothermia. If the body cools too quickly, vital signs can be nearly undetectable." She glanced at the small bundle in her arms. "But this is unusual. We'll know more soon." The ambulance screeched to a stop outside St. Vincent's Medical Center. As soon as the back doors flung open, a team of neonatal specialists was waiting. Dr. Alan Reese, the attending physician, quickly assessed the baby as the team moved down the hall toward the NICU. "What do we know?" Dr. Reese asked, keeping pace with the gurney. "Declared deceased earlier today," Sarah explained. "No heartbeat, no respiration. Then, during a prayer service, spontaneous return of circulation. Pulse is present now, but weak." Dr. Reese frowned, motioning toward an incubator. "Let's get a full workup, APGAR, blood gases, CT scan, everything. We need to rule out underlying conditions. Keep the parents updated." Emily and James barely had time to process what was happening before their baby was whisked away behind sterile glass doors. Emily turned to James, gripping his arm. "What if they take our baby back there and—" She stopped herself, unable to finish the thought. James pulled her close. "No, we're not losing our baby again." Minutes stretched into an eternity as they waited outside the NICU. Nurses moved in and out, but no one had answers yet. The last time they had sat in a hospital waiting room, they had been told their child was gone. Now they didn't know what to believe. Finally, Dr. Reese emerged, his expression unreadable. Emily jumped to her feet. "Doctor, please, what's happening?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead before speaking. "Your baby is alive," he confirmed. "But we need to understand why the initial diagnosis was wrong." Emily's legs nearly gave out beneath her. "So what does that mean? Is our baby going to be okay?" Dr. Reese hesitated. "We're running tests, but there's a possibility of neurological complications. The lack of oxygen for an extended period, it could have caused damage. We just don't know yet. James tightened his grip on Emily's hand. But there's a chance, right? A chance our baby could be okay. The doctor met their eyes. Yes, but we're in uncharted territory. For now, we focus on keeping your child stable. Tears streamed down Emily's face, a mixture of relief and renewed fear. Their baby had come back, but the fight wasn't over yet. Hours passed in agonizing uncertainty. Emily and James sat in the dimly lit waiting room outside the NICU, their hands intertwined, their bodies tense with exhaustion and fear. Nurses moved in and out, but no one stopped long enough to give them real answers. Finally, a young nurse approached with a clipboard. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter?" Emily shot up from her chair. "Yes, please, do you have any news?" The nurse offered a small, reassuring smile. "Your baby is stable for now. Dr. Reese will explain more, but he asked me to let you know that the tests are in progress. The oxygen levels are improving, and we're monitoring brain activity closely." Emily exhaled shakily, nodding. James squeezed her hand. "Can we see the baby?" The nurse hesitated before nodding. "For a few minutes, but we need to keep the NICU environment controlled, so only one at a time for now." Emily barely waited for permission before stepping forward. "I'll go first." Inside the NICU, the world was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. The sight of their child, tiny, fragile, surrounded by tubes and wires, made her heart ache. The baby's chest rose and fell with effort, a sign of the fight still ahead. Dr. Reese stood nearby, reviewing a chart. He glanced up as Emily entered. "Mrs. Carter." His voice was calm but serious. "I want to be honest with you. We're still trying to determine what happened. The MRI is coming up soon, which will tell us if there was any neurological damage. But so far, your baby is showing signs of responsiveness." Emily's breath hitched. "Responsiveness? You mean, Dr. Reese nodded. "It's subtle, but there are reflexive movements. We're hopeful. However, we need to rule out any underlying conditions that could have caused the initial misdiagnosis." Emily stepped closer to the incubator, her fingers trembling as she reached through the opening to gently touch her baby's tiny hand. It was warm, alive. She felt a soft squeeze, so light she might have imagined it. A sob escaped her lips. Dr. Reese watched her closely. "We'll keep monitoring, and if everything continues to improve, we might be able to attempt feeding soon. The next 24 hours will be critical." Emily wiped her tears and nodded. "Thank you, doctor." She didn't know what the future held. There were still too many unknowns, too many fears lingering in the back of her mind. But at that moment, none of it mattered. Her baby was alive, and that was enough to hold on to. As the hours turned into days, the hospital remained a whirlwind of tests, observations, and cautious optimism. Emily and James barely left the NICU, taking turns sitting beside their baby's incubator, whispering soft words of encouragement, willing their child to keep fighting. Dr. Reese kept them updated every step of the way. "The MRI results are back," he told them one afternoon, his expression careful but not grim. "There are no signs of major brain damage. We were concerned about prolonged oxygen deprivation, but from what we're seeing, your baby is responding well." Emily let out a shaky breath, her grip on James's hand tightening. So, our baby is going to be okay? Dr. Reese nodded. So far, all signs point to a full recovery. We still need to monitor feeding, reflexes, and overall development, but I'm cautiously optimistic. James exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging with relief. That's incredible. A few days later, Emily was finally able to hold her baby for the first time since the ordeal began. The tiny warmth against her chest felt like a miracle, not in a supernatural sense, but in the sheer resilience of life itself. She and James decided to name their child Noah, a symbol of new beginnings. As the medical team reviewed the events leading up to Noah's apparent death and revival, a clearer picture emerged. Dr. Reese explained it to the Carters in detail. We believe this was a case of neonatal hypoxia-induced reflexive suspension, he said. In rare cases, a newborn's body can enter a temporary state of suspended animation when oxygen levels drop drastically. Vital signs become undetectable, making it appear as though the baby has passed away. When Noah was moved and his body warmed up, his system gradually restarted. James rubbed his face in disbelief. So, he was never really gone? Dr. Reese hesitated. Medically speaking, he was in an unresponsive state that mimicked death. But the fact that he spontaneously recovered is rare, almost unheard of. The hospital launched an internal review to understand how the initial diagnosis had gone so wrong. But for the Carters, the only thing that mattered was that their son was alive and well. 2 weeks later, Noah was cleared for discharge. The moment Emily and James carried their son out of the hospital, past the same doors where they had once thought they'd leave empty-handed, felt surreal. News of Noah's story had spread beyond the hospital, and as they stepped outside, a few reporters waited, eager to capture the moment. James shielded Emily and the baby from the flashing cameras. "Are you willing to share your story?" one journalist asked. "People are calling this a miracle." Emily glanced down at Noah, peacefully sleeping in her arms. She looked at James, then back at the reporters. "It's not a miracle," she said softly. "It's science. It's medicine. It's a reminder that sometimes life finds a way." And with that, they walked toward their car, ready to finally bring their son home.